Hello and welcome back to the program. I am once again your host Joe. Today we're going to talk about another movie. Last week in the race I got Night on Earth from 1991. It's a Jim Jarmusch film. It's labeled as a comedy drama. I guess you could call it a drama, and there's definitely parts that are intended to be more comedic than dramatic, but yeah. It made it onto my list because it's a film from the 1990s, and I think I just looked at it and said, I need something from Jim Jarmusch, so let's go with that. Just over 2 hours long, 7.7 out of 10 on IMDb. Not a bad film, I will say. It's sort of like an anthology. It's 5 different stories. They all take place in the same night, in 5 different cities around the world, and they're all the story of a different ride in a cab. So the first story we get in is in LA. There is a wealthy lady on an airplane. It turns out she's actually the old lady from the Notebook, if you've seen that. It's been a million years since I have. It's very whatever, but people love it. Yeah, so she's getting off of an airplane at the airport, and there is a gal who's dropping off some passengers at the airport. They're like in a band or something, and she's just dropping them off, and wouldn't you know it, chance meeting, the rich lady needs a cab ride, and there's a cab here, and hey, it's being driven by Winona Ryder, it turns out. So that's always fun. They're very odd couple. They're like, it's just because they're so different from each other. Like, so Winona Ryder's character, she's like gritty, she wants to be a mechanic, you know, she's smoking, she's like chain smoking, she's like got oil smudged on her face because she'd like been fiddling with the engine in her car. And then the other woman is like, yeah, she's dressed fancy, she's got, you know, immaculately kept hair, and she's also very professional. She's got like a briefcase, she's got a cell phone, which was a much bigger deal in 1991 than it is in 2025, believe you me. And yeah, it's just sort of a bit of a clash of personalities, but you know, they have fun along the way. She's driving her to Beverly Hills because she's like representing some actors or something. And she wants to get them cast in a film, as you do when you're a talent agent. And by the end of the ride, she's just like, how would you like to be an actress? And she's like, nah, I don't want to be an actress, I want to be a mechanic. Bye-bye. And off she goes. But, you know, it was very much like, they butted heads a few times. The old lady had said to Winona Ryder, you shouldn't smoke so much. And I'm like, I understand why you'd say that. She's been smoking the entire time. Like, she is literally chain smoking. She goes maybe like a minute between cigarettes. It's wild. We then go to so they have like a device where they have 5 different clocks on a wall. They're all set to the different time zones for the different cities, because that's like the thing, is it's like progressing eastward. So LA first, then we go to New York. There's a fella in the street trying to get a cab. I guess he's in Manhattan and he wants to go to Brooklyn. Is Manhattan where Broadway is? I'm pretty sure he's in Manhattan and he wants to go to Brooklyn. We do see the Brooklyn Bridge, and I'm pretty sure that goes from Manhattan to Brooklyn. I've never been to New York. I am 100% guessing based off of like popular culture. No cabs are stopping. A cab finally stops, and the guy's like, hey, you go to Brooklyn? And then the cab just drives off. So I'm like, why aren't you take the subway, man? Take the subway. It's easier, it's cheaper. Jump over the turnstile. You could do that, it's 1991. No, eventually a cab pulls up very jerkily, like the driver's like stepping on the gas, step on the brake, step on the gas, step on the brake. Parappa the Rapper, right here.
Step on the gas, step on the gas, step on the brakes, step on the brake.
So this cab stops, and the guy's like, oh, are you willing to go to Brooklyn? And the cabbie says in fairly broken English, Brookland, you show me. I'm like, oh, okay. I didn't realize this on first watching. I didn't realize this until I looked up the actors after the fact. This is Giancarlo Esposito, the passenger in this bit. He's unrecognizable. Like, okay, when you know that it's him, you're like, oh, I can see it now. You can see, like, the facial structure, but this is, like 20 years before Breaking Bad happens, so he looks completely different. He acts incredibly different. Like, I'm accustomed to this guy acting somber and cold and serious. And the role he plays in this is like rambunctious street tough. Like, he's basically playing Jazz from Fresh Prince. It's wild. That man has incredible range. I am so glad he was able to get the part in Breaking Bad, because that is a career maker and he deserves the chance to shine as much as he can. So yeah, the cab driver, he's driving, and he's driving very jerkily, and after about a block, the passenger is like, I want to get out. I can't ride in this cab like this. And the driver's like, no, you stay in the cab. It's fine. This is very important to me. I need to drive the cab. And so they end up coming to an agreement where they trade places. So now Giancarlo Esposito is driving the cab, and the driver, whose name is Helmut, he's sitting in the passenger seat. The back seat is empty. And they do make a little point where he's like, oh, what's your name? He's like, my name is Helmut, and he like points to they got the picture inside the cab that says this driver's name, and he's Giancarlo. Giancarlo is cackling. He is very amused by the fact that this man's name is Helmut. He's like, Helmet, that's something you put on your head. What kind of parent would name their kid that? And then when he's like, oh, what is your name? He's like, my name's Yo-Yo. And I'm like, oh my god. Okay. And when the guy's like, oh, it's like the children's toy, he gets all serious. And where have I seen that before?
And you buy them for yourself. Go have a conversation with all the ladies and tell them your problems.
You lady Squiscar?
No, I'm not!
Anyway, so yeah, so he's driving, and he's showing him this is how you get to Brooklyn. So they drive over there, and when they cross over into Brooklyn, he's just like, or no, before they cross over into Brooklyn, he sees somebody, and he's like, what's she doing here? And so they stop, and he gets out of the car, and he runs over to this lady, and he's yelling at her. Apparently she's his sister-in-law, and she's going off to a party, and she's like, my husband knows I'm out here. He's like, no, he don't. You're not supposed to be out here. Get in the car. And so he basically, like, he just takes her, and off they go. They abscond with this lady, played by Rosie Perez, who is also fantastic. Dressed to the nines here. I very much appreciate this outfit. And so she's in the car, and they're yelling at each other, and Helmut makes things, very nice, and he smooths things over, and, she's like, oh, he's fun, that's great. He reveals that he is a clown. When he was in East Germany, he was a circus clown, and he demonstrates this by playing two flutes simultaneously, like one on each side of his mouth. And they're like, oh, that's cool. But he's in America now, he's playing he's driving a cab, and he's not very good at it. He doesn't know how to deal with an automatic transmission, he doesn't know how to use the parking brake. The guy's like, you gotta put it in D for drive. He's like, oh, okay. Yeah, just the fact that, he's a performer, he's good at it. He knows how to, get a chuckload of people. So yeah, they drive over the bridge, and off they go into Brooklyn, and he drops them both off, and they're like, alright, you have a good time there, Helmut, and he just drives off just fine. And I'm like, oh, so he knew how to drive all along. He was just, the fact that he's a clown was something that he employed in his driving. That's great. The next city, it pans over, we go to Paris. It is noteworthy, I will mention this, they have the screen when it transitions from one city to another, they show the clocks, and then they show a map that scans over to the city. And for Paris, it scanned up Africa into France. This is notable because the cab that we start in It's being driven by a man, and there's two men in the back seat, and the guys in the back seat are like boisterous and chuckling and talking about how they've bamboozled an ambassador or something. They are both African, it turns out, and they end up trying to play a game, trying to figure out where in Africa the cabbie is from too, because he's also African. And they're like, "Oh, are you from Benin? Oh, are you Nigerian?" And one of them like climbs over the seat and like gets a good look at his face. It's like, "Oh man, with a face like that, he's got to be from Benin." "Oh, where are you from?" And they're talking about they're talking about, basically it's a reference to like France's colonial history. They talk about how countries in Africa are like little brothers of France, and all these little brothers coming to France and not knowing how to be deferential or something. And he reveals he is Ivorian, and they chuckle in the back seat, and they say that explains why you've run so many red lights. And it's actually a very good pun. Côte d'Ivoire, the Ivory Coast, people from there are called Ivorian, and in French, Ivoirien is I can't see anything, and I am nothing if not a slave to a good pun. And that was also that cab driver's breaking point. He kicks them out of the cab and forgets to charge them, but you'd be hard pressed to charge two people you're kicking out of your cab, in the middle of nowhere at 4 a.m. But he picks up another fare, and fittingly, it's a woman who is actually blind. So she gets in the cab, and she's got like the white cane, and she's like, "You almost fucking hit me, man." And he's like, oops. He doesn't apologize. He doesn't take directions. She's like, "You're supposed to take, my preferred route, aren't you?" And he's just like, whatever. And he thinks he can just drive wherever he wants. He takes a tunnel, and she's like, "Hey, you're not supposed to go into the tunnel." Like, she's able to perceive the difference in lighting, that sort of thing. He ends up asking her a bunch of questions about, like, what it's like to be blind. You're always blind. And she's just like, she's snappy in her answers, but also that's the sort of thing I think that you're probably not supposed to just, "Hey, what's it like to be blind? Does it suck? What's it like in bed when you're blind? How can you tell who you're sleeping with?" And she's just like, "Fuck you, I can tell." And I'm like, there's no wonder this lady is just, she's had enough. And when he drops her off, she's walking along the side of a river running through Paris. And she's got the cane, and so she's hitting like the railing at the side of the river, so she knows not to go in. But you see her sort of listing towards it, and you're just like, is she gonna go in? And then no, she doesn't. She corrects every time. And he watches her for a minute just to make sure she doesn't like go face first into the water. But she's fine, so he starts writing up his fare book. And then as soon as he pulls out, he hits something, and she hears it and is just smiling because she knows he can see just fine, but boy, does he not look where he's going. And that has been like the gimmick. He barrels into things, and it doesn't work out. You want to watch where you're going, especially when you're driving. Then the map slides over. Next clock is set in Rome. We have a guy in a cab. He's wearing dark sunglasses. He's got a mess of curly hair. This man is clearly very Northern Italian. He is also very clearly his own biggest fan. He has nobody in the car. He's not even on the radio. He's just spitting one-liners at himself to entertain himself. He's just going. He's just spitting. Like if somebody wound up Robin Williams and gave him an audience, but this guy doesn't even have an audience. I mean, he does, but in the world of the movie, he doesn't know he has an audience. His character is just somebody who's in love with the sound of his own voice. He thinks he's the funniest guy he knows. He ends up picking up a fare. He does a little gimmick. He does a little joke. He spins around a statue. he's just like, oh, sorry, I thought you were coming around the other way. Oops, my bad. Get in the car. It's a priest, and he's like, oh, I didn't think I'd really pick up a cardinal. And the guy's like, I'm not a cardinal. He's like, are we taking you to the Vatican? Like, no, going to this other place. And so off they go. And I swear the priest got fewer lines than like anybody else in the film. That includes the two people that got kicked out of the car at the start of the previous section, because the cab driver just is unrelenting in what he needs to talk to the passenger about. He's just non-stop motor mouth going. He tells him a story. He basically tells him his entire childhood and teenage years and bizarre sexual habits. And I'm like, I know he's a priest, but dog. He's like, I need to confess something to you. Can I confess something to you? And the priest is like, this is supposed to be anonymous. This isn't the right place for that sort of thing. And so he's like, well, I gotta do it anyway. So here goes. And he starts telling him about how, like, when he was younger, he would, like, have sex with pumpkins. And I'm like, you can't do that. A, you shouldn't tell him that. And B, I'm pretty sure trans Twitter has that copyrighted already. You can't do that. The story then leads up to, there was a sheep that he hooked up with, which is, he's describing the sheep as like this like majestic creature, and then his parents are like, no, we gotta get rid of the sheep, and so they sell her to a butcher. He's just like, now I don't eat meat because of the sheep, and I don't eat vegetables because of the pumpkins. I don't eat a whole lot, it turns out. And then the story, is this I don't know how to quantify worseness in terms of if this is worse or not, but he then goes on to talk about how he slept with his sister-in-law, and now he doesn't see his brother-in-law that much. Or he doesn't see his brother that much. He's like, oh, I saw her ass, and I was just like, what an incredible ass. And then, we're just on the floor, and the priest is in the back, and he's just barely able to get a word in. And he's like shakily handling a bottle of pills, and they hit a bump and his pills go flying, and then he can't get the cabbie to stop for a second, so he just like leans back and croaks in the back seat. And the cabbie's just like, I have to believe that his story is not earnest. I have to believe his story is just a ramping up tale of debauchery, aristocrat style, where like the punchline is supposed to be like just in how you tell the story. But yeah, the priest just dies in the back seat. Also, I'm very certain I saw a moment where his dead corpse blinked, but we can't fault the actor for that. Yeah, the guy driving the cab, if you've seen the film Life is Beautiful, he wrote and directed and starred in that. Good film. Very fucked up, but that's gonna happen when you deal with the Holocaust, He also was in the 2019 Pinocchio movie as Geppetto, I believe. This dude is on the radar now, and he keeps showing up in things. So yeah, after he realizes the priest is dead, he's just like, oh shit, what do I do? And in my head, I'm just like, drive him to the hospital and say he died in your car. You won't get in trouble. They will be able to tell that you didn't kill him. He clearly had a heart attack or something. But no, instead what he does is, he stops at a park, pulls the priest out of his cab, sets him on a bench, and just leaves him there, and then drives off. And I'm like, you are gonna get in so much trouble. But that's the end of that story. Just priest who cannot get a word in edgewise, cabbie who cannot stop talking, and at the end, one of them's dead. And then our final city is Helsinki up in Finland. It is incredibly late over there, and given that it's also Helsinki, it's very snowy. And I saw that and I was just like, oh, because I'm dealing with so much snow here locally. It is winter at the moment, and oh boy, we just had an ice storm, and I've been stuck inside because it's been like a week. And the sidewalks have 6 inches of ice on them, and that is not good for walking. And so I've had enough of snow. The LA section was fine, but here we are in Helsinki. I will swallow it. It's whatever. I am living in a winter horrorland right now. It's not great. So the cab pulls up to this establishment, and there's 3 guys standing outside, all leaning on each other. He honks the horn, and one of them falls down. Actually, they all kind of fall down, but one of them like stays falling down. So they're all drunk. I couldn't do this job. They get in, and they're like arguing with the cabbie, and they're, one of them is like passed out in the back seat, and the other 2 are like bickering, and they've been drinking the whole night, because it turns out the guy who's passed out has had a very bad day. Just an incredibly, really bad day. He lost his job, his car was wrecked, his daughter is pregnant, and his wife is leaving him. So, that's the whole thing. They're just telling him, oh, these horrible things have happened to our friend, so we were drinking. We were spending his severance pay on drinks because he's had the worst day possible. And the cabbie, oh my god, the cabbie is just like, well, you think that's bad? And tells them the story of his dead fucking baby. Oh wow. And just about how he had to, like, his wife was pregnant, they were trying for a family, and so that's his whole thing, is at least this guy has a family, he has a kid, he's had something going on. There's a guy and his wife, they're like, yeah, we tried, she got pregnant, and then she like went into labor early, and the baby happened, and the hospital was like, oh, this baby's really early, this probably won't survive. And so he's like, I need to be ice cold. I need to not have emotional attachment to the baby. Because when it dies, and it's going to die, I don't want to be fucked up. And so like 3 weeks go by as this baby is in the hospital. The mother is visiting, and he's just like, okay, 3 weeks, maybe it'll be okay. The wife is like, you have to love the baby because its love is from me is keeping it alive, and with the 2 of us, then it'll be okay. And he's like, okay, I will love the baby. They go to the hospital. The doctor's like, it's dead. And so, just complete. You can't beat that. You can't one up. Oh, you think that's bad? I have a dead baby at home. Like, oh my god. So it's a very sobering thing for the folks who are drunk in the cab. He drives them home. They get out. And they walk up the hill singing the national anthem. He has to rouse the guy who's passed out to get the payment because he's the one with the severance pay. And the guy's like, who the fuck are you? And he's like, I'm the guy who's driven you home. You owe me like $20. And so the guy, he gives him money, and then he just sits down on the sidewalk in the snow as people are coming out and say to him, oh, good morning. And he's just sitting there. And then the credits roll. I'm like, well, interesting series of stories. And they, bless him, Jim Jarmusch did find actual, like, they didn't just film in a foreign location with American actors. They went the full 9 yards and, like, subtitled everything. Obviously, if you're filming in a place, then you're going to have pick of the locals for acting. But, some places might not want to use subtitles in their film. Some directors might want to have A-list American celebrities for this thing. But Jim Jarmusch is, after all, a known auteur filmmaker, so that makes sense to me. Yeah, it was... I don't know that I'd necessarily watch it again so soon. I might recommend parts of it to people, and that's the thing, it's like an anthology. You can say, hey, like I linked a partner the New York story, because I was like, have a look at this. I didn't even fucking recognize Gus. Look at him. And they're like, holy shit, that is that same guy. And then they watched it and they were like, that was a really fun story. I enjoyed that. Yeah, so you could just say, hey, watch this one, watch that one. You know, I might even recommend the Italian story to people because it was just so bananas. And that guy just went the whole time, just da-da-da. non-stop. Yeah. So that's Night on Earth from Jim Jarmusch. Decently star-studded cast. I don't know anything about. I don't know anything about the Finnish actors. They weren't like visibly noteworthy. What I know of Finland, they looked Finnish, and they were very obviously Finnish. And this was filmed in Helsinki, so you know. The Pairs Cab was also fine. You could tell the lady in the back seat, you know, she was. I don't know what she was doing. Like when they make a person blind in something, you know, it's not like your eyes just. She had her eyes rolled into the back of her head the whole time. So, like, but that's hard to maintain, so, like, she had, you know, visible pupils at the top sometimes. So I'm like, okay, I see what's going on here. They didn't bother with, like, white contact lenses or anything. That was the thing they could do in 1990. Yeah, I'm familiar with her now that I've looked her up somewhat. None of the other actors in it I was aware of. But they were all very good. Solid acting all around. Night on Earth, give it a watch. And speaking of giving it a watch, what are we watching next? 3, 2, 1, go! Alright, so, everybody's being heated up. Oh! The robot's gonna dump us out. I thought we were gonna bubble and pop out of the top like popcorn. But this works too. Alright, everybody goes. Gets dumped out? I'm already in love with this course. This is great. Okay, everybody comes out of the thing. Into the funnel. There they go. There is a series of glass tubes. Glass tubes. Number 1 is... Okay, this is... Everybody's changing a little too much here. The Innocent, Doom Generation, Ghosts, Vampire. It's anybody's game at the moment. Okay. Out front, my favorite software is Being Here, and My Dinner with Andre, followed by Last Hurrah for Chivalry. Over the burning section, up the twisty bit here, and then into this. Some things have fallen off. The Innocent is... Oh, wow, a lot of things are out. Oh my god. This is a hazard. Okay, we have some little flags here blocking the path. Out they go. Last Hurrah for Chivalry is out front. Followed by the Velvet Vampire is overtaken it somewhat. The Seventh Seal is out in front now. Last Hurrah for Chivalry. Okay. That is, I believe John Woo's first directorial film. Going around these... Oh, they have a side shoot. Okay. So we have a few options for directions to go. The third man might be getting an unfair advantage, or maybe not. Seventh Seal out front. Oh my god, are we getting Ingmar Bergman? Okay, Seventh Seal, followed by Last Hurrah for Chivalry, Phantasm, the Velvet Vampire. Up another twisty thing here. Seventh Steel, still out front, and off into the abyss it goes. Last Hurrah for Chivalry, also dead. Phantasm, followed by the Velvet Vampire. This isn't even going to be close. I mean, it's going to be close between these two. It's either Phantasm or the Velvet Vampire, and it is... Wait, that's not... It's... Phantasm. Okay, number 1, Phantasm. Number 2, the Velvet Vampire. Number 3, the Cameraman. Then the Sweet Smell of Success. The Third Man. Occult is my passport coming in. Will it find a test tube next? Yes, it will. No, it won't. Night Moves find a test tube. Then Occult is my passport. Here comes the Fabulous Baron Munchausen, which appears to be our last finisher. And then a couple of things that didn't finish. Alright, the winner is Phantasm. The heck is Phantasm? Alright, let me pull up my list here. Phantasm, 1979. I needed a horror film, so that's it. Oh, horror film. We have a couple of horror film folks in the audience here who will be down to see that. Yeah, 1979, directed by Don Coscarelli. It's a fantasy horror, 6.6 out of 10 on the IMDb, 89 minutes, a solid hour and a half. ideal movie length, if I do say so myself. Alright, I'm gonna mark that down. Phantasm.